The exclusive Italian restaurant Salvatore hummed with the muted conversations of New York's elite, a world Lucy Rivers still felt like an intruder in. Crystal chandeliers shimmered above linen-draped tables, the air thick with perfume and power. For 6 months she'd served in this temple of taste, moving quietly between patrons who could spend more on a bottle of wine than she earned in 2 weeks. Tonight felt different, the kind of night where the air carried warning. The private dining section had been reserved for Alexander Moretti and his associate. Even Lucy, who avoided gossip, knew his name. Heir to the Moretti crime family, controller of half the city's underworld before his 30th birthday, his reputation made men cross the street. Now 34, he ruled through silence more than noise. When the head waitress, Sandra, leaned close and whispered, "Table 7 needs you. Be perfect," Lucy's stomach tightened. At table 7 5 men in tailored suits murmured over whiskey, but it was the man at the head who drew every glance without trying. Alexander Moretti sat like someone accustomed to command. Slicked back dark hair, neatly trimmed beard, the top buttons of his crisp white shirt undone to reveal a gold chain and the faint edge of a tattoo. He was composed danger wrapped in elegance. Lucy felt the weight of his presence as she approached. One of the men ordered another round without looking up. She nodded, ready to retreat, when she caught a conversation from the next table. A desperate businessman apologizing in English to foreign clients whose rapid Italian frustration filled the air. Their translator had cancelled. The deal was collapsing in real time. Before she could think better of it, Lucy stepped forward and said, in flawless Italian, "May I help?" The change was instant. The Italian's relief flooded the table as she translated smoothly, bridging languages and tempers. Her voice was steady, her accent pure Florence. When the conversation ended with handshakes and smiles, the businessman stared at her as though she'd performed a miracle. What Lucy didn't realize was that the entire Moretti table had fallen silent. All eyes were on her, including Alexander's. He leaned back, studying her with unreadable amusement before his voice, low and commanding, cut through the restaurant. $50,000 to anyone here who can translate what I'm about to say. No one moved. No one dared. The room froze under the challenge. Lucy hesitated, pulse hammering. 50,000 would wipe her mother's medical debt clean. She swallowed fear and turned toward him. "I'll translate," she said softly. A flicker, half smile, half test, crossed his face. Then in perfect Italian he asked, "When you look at a man like me, do you see the monster everyone fears, or the man no one knows?" The intimacy of the question struck her like a physical touch. She translated it aloud, her voice steady despite the tremor beneath it. The room held its breath. Alexander's gaze never left hers. "And your answer?" he asked in English. Lucy met his eyes. "I don't see either," she said. "I don't know you well enough to see the man, and I make a point not to believe in monsters." For a heartbeat, silence ruled. Then Alexander Moretti laughed, genuinely, unexpectedly. His men stiffened, shocked. "Bring us another round," he said, still watching her. "And the 50,000 is yours." When she returned to her duties, Lucy felt his eyes on her like heat she couldn't escape. By closing time, his table was gone, but a black card with a gold-embossed number waited for her. Sandra's voice trembled. "He left that for you. Don't call him Lucy. Men like Alexander Moretti don't notice women like us unless they want something." Lucy slipped the card into her pocket, smiling faintly. She told herself it was harmless curiosity, but as she walked home she couldn't ignore the way the card seemed to burn against her thigh, or how a single question from a dangerous man had already begun to rewrite her life. 2 days passed before Lucy found the sleek black envelope waiting on her doormat. Her pulse quickened the moment she saw it. No return address, no stamp, just her name written in perfect ink strokes that somehow felt more like a signature than a message. Inside was a check for exactly $50,000 and a single handwritten note on heavy card stock. "A debt honored is a reputation maintained." The translation was worth every penny. M. Lucy stared at it in disbelief, her hands trembling. How had he found her address? The thought sent a chill through her that mingled with something else she didn't want to name. The money could save her mother's life, but the price felt too invisible to be harmless. At work that evening, an enormous bouquet of white lilies arrived at Salvatore, delivered by a man in a black suit who said only, "For Miss Rivers." Sandra eyed the flowers with open suspicion. "Do I even have to ask?" she muttered. "It's from him, isn't it?" Lucy tried to deflect with a shrug, but the truth glowed in the simple card tucked among the blooms. "Thank you for your assistance." Sandra crossed her arms. "Lucy, listen to me. People like Alexander Moretti don't give gifts. They send messages. He noticed you for a reason, and that reason isn't romantic." Lucy smiled faintly, arranging the lilies in a vase. "It's just gratitude." "Gratitude doesn't come wrapped in death flowers," Sandra said darkly. That night, curiosity clawed past caution. Lucy opened her laptop and typed Alexander Moretti into the search bar. Pages of results unfurled, business magazines praising his empire, glossy photos of charity events, interviews full of half-truths and polished smiles. Beneath that surface, in older articles and anonymous forums, she found the shadows. Missing rivals, contracts rewritten through intimidation, the family's legacy tracing back to the old five families of New York. The deeper she scrolled, the more she saw how power shaped him, and how carefully he hid the cost. But no article captured the way his laughter had broken through the air that night, or how he'd looked at her as if she'd cracked something open inside him. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. She checked the peephole and froze. Vito, the driver from Salvatore, stood in the hall, his hat in hand. "Mr. Moretti requests your presence," he said quietly. "It's urgent." "At midnight," Lucy protested. "He apologizes for the hour," Vito replied. His tone made it clear this wasn't optional. Every instinct screamed to refuse, to close the door, but curiosity and something else, something reckless, made her grab her coat and follow. 20 minutes later, she was inside a black car cutting through the glowing arteries of Manhattan. When the elevator opened into Alexander Moretti's penthouse, the city spread before her like a sea of light. He stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, sleeves rolled up, the night painting his silhouette in gold and shadow. "Thank you for coming," he said without turning. "Did I have a choice?" she asked, trying to sound braver than she felt. He turned then, eyes sharper and quieter than she remembered. "There's always a choice, Lucy," he said, using her first name for the first time. "Even when it doesn't feel like it." "Why am I here?" she demanded. "Because I needed to speak with you somewhere private." He poured 2 fingers of amber liquid into a crystal glass. "Drink." She shook her head. "Answers." He studied her for a moment before saying, "The Rossi family of Florence. Does that name mean anything to you?" Her brow furrowed. "My grandmother was from Florence. Her name was Sophia Rossi." "Why?" His expression didn't change, but something in the room did. "Because she wasn't just from Florence," he said softly. "She ruled half of it once. And that makes you the last living heir to a bloodline my family swore to protect, or destroy." For a moment, Lucy couldn't breathe. The city outside flickered like it, too, was waiting for her response. "You're lying," she whispered. "Am I?" Alexander asked, stepping closer until the city lights reflected in his eyes like fire. "Or have you simply never been told who you really are?" Lucy wanted to deny everything, to laugh and tell him he was mistaken. But the quiet certainty in his tone made her skin crawl. "You're saying my grandmother was, what? Some kind of crime boss?" she asked, forcing the words through the tightness in her chest. Alexander's mouth curved, not in amusement but in something closer to regret. "Your grandmother was the daughter of Antonio Rossi, one of the most feared men in Florence. When the rival families turned on them, she escaped. Everyone else died in the fire that destroyed the Rossi estate. Everyone thought she had, too, until I met you." He set his drink down, his voice lowering. The resemblance is undeniable, Lucy. The same eyes. The same defiance. Her thoughts whirled. Memories of her grandmother, soft hands, strict lessons, an unshakable insistence on speaking Italian at home, rearranged themselves into a shape she no longer recognized. "That's impossible," she whispered. She was a seamstress. She came here for a better life. She came here to survive, Alexander corrected. She changed her name, faked her death, and built a new life on another continent. And you, Lucy Rivers, are the last living Rossi. She shook her head. Even if that were true, why would it matter now? That was 60 years ago. Alexander's expression hardened. Because the men who destroyed your family never paid for it. And because your name, your blood, just resurfaced in New York. To the wrong people, that's not history. It's unfinished business. He moved closer, slow and deliberate, as if approaching something fragile. Don Ritchie recognized your name at dinner. He wasn't the only one. Others will follow. Lucy's knees felt weak. So what, you're saying I'm in danger? I'm saying you're already being watched. He took out a folded photograph from his pocket and held it out. This was taken last week. The grainy image showed Lucy leaving her building, a man in a dark coat half a step behind her, face tilted away from the camera. Marco Bianchi's men, Alexander said quietly. He's the one who ordered the hit on your family all those years ago. His grandson's in the city now, and if he finds you before I do, his jaw flexed. You won't get the chance to hear the rest of this story. Lucy stared at the photograph, pulse pounding. Why are you helping me? She asked finally. Because my grandfather made a promise to yours, he said. A blood oath. He swore that the Moretti family would protect the Rossi line if ever it resurfaced. That oath binds me, whether I want it or not. He paused, his gaze softening. And maybe because you walked into a room full of predators and didn't flinch. She turned toward the window, watching the endless city below. What do I do now? You let me keep you alive, he said simply. For now, that means you stay under my protection. Protection? She echoed bitterly. You mean captivity. Call it what you want, he said, voice calm but final. But if you leave here tonight, I can't promise you'll make it home. Silence hung heavy between them. Finally, Lucy exhaled. Then tell me everything. No more secrets. Alexander nodded once, eyes steady. Then you should know, he said. The war that killed your family might be about to start again, and this time, it's coming for both of us. Lucy didn't sleep that night. The city lights beyond the penthouse windows bled into the early dawn, and every sound, a car horn, a distant siren, even the whisper of wind between the glass towers, kept her nerves strung tight. When the elevator chimed, she flinched, only to see Alexander returning, jacket over his arm, shirt open at the collar. The world outside had already shifted, she could feel it. Pack a bag, he said. We're leaving. Leaving. Her voice cracked. You said I'd be safe here. You were, he replied, tone clipped. Until 2 hours ago, when someone tried to bribe one of my doormen to install a camera facing your floor. He poured coffee into 2 cups as casually as if discussing the weather. They're closing in faster than I expected. Lucy gripped the counter to steady herself. You think it's the Bianca family? I don't think. I know. He handed her a cup. Marco Bianca's grandson has returned to New York, and he's already making moves. Your leverage, Lucy. The last Rossi is worth more than a dozen territories. He met her eyes. I won't let them use you. Within the hour, they were in a sleek black SUV cutting through the thinning city traffic. The driver was Vito. Another man sat in the passenger seat, broad-shouldered, watchful. Enzo, Alexander said, noticing her glance. He's part of your security detail now. My security detail? She repeated. You make it sound like I'm some kind of target, he interrupted. You are. The city slowly gave way to the quiet sweep of upstate roads, snow still clinging to the trees. Where are we going? Lucy asked finally. Somewhere safe, he said. A house my mother designed. No one outside my inner circle knows it exists. His voice softened. You'll like it. It's quiet there. He was right. Hours later, they turned onto a private road and emerged into a clearing where glass and stone rose out of the forest. The house looked like it had grown from the land itself, modern lines softened by moss and pine. Inside, sunlight spilled across polished floors and the faint scent of cedar lingered in the air. It's beautiful, Lucy murmured, unable to help herself. My mother believed power should be silent, Alexander said, his voice gentler now. No need to announce it. He showed her to a suite in the east wing, a terrace overlooking a lake, a fireplace, soft colors that invited calm. You'll stay here, he said. Clothes are in the closet. My assistant guessed your size. She stared at him. You really planned for this, didn't you? He didn't deny it. Contingency is survival. After he left, Lucy explored the space, finding every comfort already arranged. Clothes that fit, books in Italian and English, a laptop waiting on the desk. The precision unsettled her. How long had he known about her? How long had he been preparing for her arrival? When she finally opened her grandmother's old journal, the one she'd retrieved from her mother's attic, she saw pages of coded writing in looping Italian script. As she worked to decode it, her hands trembled. The words that emerged told a story she wasn't ready for: betrayal, war, and a promise sealed in blood. Trust only those who bear the mark of the falcon. The Moretti falcon protects the last Rossi. Her breath caught. She remembered the tattoo on Alexander's forearm, the wings of a falcon inked in black. The journal slipped from her hands. A knock sounded at the door. Dinner, came Alexander's voice. Downstairs, he waited at a long table set for two, the fire casting gold across his face. He watched her enter with a quiet intensity that made her pulse stumble. You found something, he said. I can tell. My grandmother wrote about your family, she said, sitting opposite him. About an oath. Alexander slowly rolled up his sleeve, revealing the tattoo in full, an intricate falcon, its wings spread protectively over a crest she recognized from the journal's cover. The oath was taken by my grandfather, he said softly. Antonio Rossi saved his life. In return, he swore the Morettas would protect the Rossi bloodline. That promise binds me. Lucy stared at the date inked beneath the falcon. This is the day we met, she whispered. You added it? To remind me when the oath began again, he said. She wanted to be angry, to accuse him of manipulation, but the sincerity in his voice disarmed her. So this is all duty, she said. Obligation. It was, he said, his gaze darkening. Now it's more complicated. For a long moment they said nothing. The tension between them shifted, no longer danger but something more intimate, more dangerous in a different way. You hardly know me, she whispered. I know enough, he said. You're brave, loyal, and too honest for your own safety. His hand brushed hers, just a graze, but it burned. You make me remember there's still something human left in this business. Alexander, she started, not sure if it was a question or a warning. He didn't answer with words. The distance between them vanished, and his lips met hers, gentle at first, then deeper, desperate, as if everything he'd been holding back finally demanded to be known. For the first time since she'd met him, Lucy didn't think, she felt. When they finally broke apart, breathless, the air between them trembled. This complicates things, he said, voice rough. They were already complicated, she murmured. He almost smiled, but then his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, and the warmth in his face drained away. Marco Bianca just made contact, he said, standing abruptly. He wants to negotiate. Negotiate what? She asked. Terms of peace, Alexander replied grimly. And his first condition is you. The word you hung in the air like a gunshot. Lucy's chair scraped back as she stood. What does that mean? Her pulse thundered in her ears. Alexander's gaze stayed steady, but his jaw clenched tight. It means Marco Bianco wants to end the feud by binding our families together, through marriage. He's offering his son as your husband. For a moment, Lucy could only stare at him. Then the shock snapped into anger. That's insane. This isn't the 1800s, you can't just trade me off like a treaty clause. Alexander's expression darkened. I told him no. Why not? She shot back, her voice trembling between fury and disbelief. If this marriage would end the violence, stop people from dying, because you're not a bargaining chip, he said sharply, cutting her off. Because the oath gives me the right to refuse any claim made on you. And because… He stopped, searching for words that didn't come easily to him. Because I won't allow it. She crossed her arms, forcing her breathing to steady. You mean you won't allow it because you think you own me? No, he said, stepping closer. Because I know what they'd do to you once the deal was sealed. You'd be a hostage in a silk cage. He exhaled, the edge softening in his voice. You deserve more than that. You deserve a choice. Lucy's anger wavered under the sincerity in his eyes. You keep saying I have choices, she whispered, but every time you make them for me. He paused, almost smiling, a sad, tired curve of his mouth. That's fair. Then, softer, so what's your choice now? She didn't answer. Couldn't. Her heart was racing for reasons that had nothing to do with fear. The silence between them stretched, electric and fragile. Then, with a resolve that surprised even herself, Lucy met his gaze. If I said yes to Marco's proposal, to protect everyone, what would you do? He moved so quickly she barely had time to breathe. One moment there was distance, the next his hand cupped her face, thumb brushing her cheek as his voice dropped to a low, dangerous murmur. You won't, he said. Because surrender isn't in your blood. And because the moment you walked into my life, this stopped being about obligation. His breath was warm against her skin. It became personal. Her pulse stumbled. Alexander! His name came out like a plea. He tilted his head slightly, the faintest trace of a smile ghosting his lips. You said you wanted choices, he murmured. So make one. His lips found hers again, fiercer this time, desperate, a collision of control and surrender that sent every rational thought scattering. She should have pulled away. Instead, she leaned in, matching him breath for breath, caught in something neither of them could stop. When they finally broke apart, his forehead rested against hers, both of them unsteady. This complicates everything, he said again, his voice rough. Before she could respond, a harsh alarm split the air, echoing through the house. The color drained from Alexander's face as he straightened, all traces of vulnerability vanishing behind that cold, lethal calm she'd seen before. Stay here, he ordered, already pulling a gun from beneath his jacket. What's happening? Lucy demanded. Marco Bianca just changed his mind, he said grimly, striding toward the door. Negotiations are over. The next minutes blurred. Shouts, the crash of breaking glass, the distant thunder of automatic fire from outside. Lucy's heart slammed against her ribs. A security guard burst into the room. Miss Rivers, this way, he barked, grabbing her arm. She resisted for a heartbeat, wanting to see Alexander, but another explosion shook the house, sending her stumbling. The guard half-dragged her down a narrow hall to a reinforced steel door. Panic room, he said, punching in a code. Stay inside until Mr. Moretti gives the all-clear. The heavy door sealed behind her with a hiss. Lucy pressed her ear against it, but all she could hear were muffled bursts of violence and the occasional barked command in Italian. On a small security monitor, she saw fragments of the house, the entryway riddled with bullet holes, men in black masks exchanging fire with Moretti's guards, and Alexander himself moving like a shadow through the chaos, precise and ruthless. It felt like watching another version of him entirely, the monster everyone feared. Hours, or maybe minutes, passed before the screen flickered. The feed cut out, replaced by static. Lucy's throat tightened. She sank to the floor, clutching the locket around her neck. Please, she whispered into the dark. Just let him be alive. When the door finally hissed open again, she didn't know how much time had passed. Alexander stood in the doorway, his shirt torn, blood spattered across his sleeve, a bruise blooming along his jaw. His eyes found her immediately. "It's not my blood," he said before she could speak. Relief crashed through her so hard it almost hurt. She ran to him, hands trembling as she touched his face. "What happened?" "They came for you," he said flatly. "They failed." He didn't elaborate and she didn't ask. His hand came up to cover hers. "You're safe now." Safe. The word felt too small for what they had survived. Lucy looked up at him, the weight of what she felt impossible to hide. "And you?" she asked quietly. "Are you safe?" His eyes softened for the briefest moment before the mask slid back into place. "Not yet," he said. "But I will be. As long as you stay with me."